announce it to the public, as it is a regulation that's going to be normalized in society, right? So when such a thing happens, people will actually know, oh, even the government have to force bio-enhancement to all of these inmates. How will this create a stigma in society? First is that society will think as if like all prisoners are like quote-unquote evil person that cannot change whatever the cause is, hence why compulsory bio-enhancement are done on their side of the house. They will then disregard the reason they did the crime, right? One of the main focus that will be on the mindset of all of these people after the government announce it is that, oh, government have to turn to compulsory bio-enhancement to change them into a good person. So even if they are promoted as a good person after prison, the fact that people will see on how they are a person that can't change at the end of the day because what they did, hence why government needs to force them later to force them into this kind of decision. Before moving on, yes?
Wouldn't stigmatization happen worse on your side because rehabilitation has no assurance that you become good?
The thing about rehabilitation is that they force someone genuinely, not because you are forcing someone because like all of this medication that promotes them to be a good person. On our side of the house, the stigma will be less because people will know they changed for a genuine reason, not because of a bio-enhancement that is forced to them on our side. And then like, what is actually the third point? What should be done actually is punishing prisoners objectively for their crimes, not to force someone into a bio-enhancement for all people, even disregarding the case or even disregarding the issue, even disregarding the issues of like why they did it. See, not to view for the defense is that not to view everyone as like evil and dismissing their effort to live as a human being. You need to realize compulsory actions such as this will only cause unfairness to people who did the crime to actually survive. Please note that the compulsory are done whether they consent to it or not after prison, like the government has stated. When you normalize such a decision, you push the mindset on how first, no matter who you are, no matter what you did, whether to survive or not, you're going to be forced to consume a dose to be a quote-unquote a good person. It kind of diminishes the idea of people can change genuinely on their side of the house, or the idea of that every prisoners are evil person to begin with. But in reality, there's a complex being on why prisoners did all of the crimes, right? Second is that not all people deserve to take the dose, even if the government said there will be like dose control or whatever. First is that not all prisoners are bad. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with them to begin with, but over time with this kind of guarantee, you push a mindset on how like they will think they're a bad person, and like the effort of them fighting to live will be diminished on their side of the house. And also, not people consent to it, because like you have to think about what the victim will think. Even like the prisoners are victims at the end of the day for some of the cause. And with that, they are not, they can't be forced to consume all of this dose at the end of the day. And with that, we protect the vulnerable actor on our side. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that stage. Now, call upon the second probability question. Here.
Before I start my speech, I just want to give a warning. We're talking about crime, we were talking about something like sexual harassment, so I'll try to be as sensitive as possible. Once you are an ex-convict, you will always be a convict, right? Before I move on to my extension, 3 clarifications to end the case of opposition. Firstly, bio-enhancement will always work. We can simply say that we have the fiat that bio-enhancement will always work, right? Because to begin with, they cannot make any arguments about feasibility. This is the fiat that government has. People will have a different perception of you because Gabby already explained to you why that's important because of criminal records. But secondly, bio-enhancement does not force you to become a better person, right? It only happens once you end your sentence, right? Exactly, then it changes your psychology to not be able to think of doing crimes, in order for you to not do other crimes, in order for you to not do recidivism. More on that later. But thirdly, then notice how opposition nitpicks our mechanism, right? They tell you that what about these victims of circumstance, for example? What about these these people who do crime who are forced to do it, right? We say that exactly our mechanism, we do it proportional to the degree of the crime, right? Exactly then, people are going to get the right amount of dosage. People are going to be adjusted, like the way they are going to change is adjusted by the dose. That is why Gabby explained to you, people who are stealing, for example, and get the dose, they will not be able to think of stealing, for example, or they will be deterred when they think of stealing, right? So therefore, yeah, their case already falls. But one issue then, before I move on to my extension, on the changing of these behaviors, right? Opposition told us that we cannot simply inject people because changing these people needs to be in a complex way. They're not going to change in a genuine way. Three responses then. Number one, there is no analysis coming on their side of the house. What do these complex processes actually look like in the first place? They only push the harms onto us, saying that it is not humane, it is not genuine, right? I don't think this idea can fly until they can explain to you what do these complex processes look like. But secondly then, exactly then, when you want like a genuine change, we use bio-enhancement in the first place. Because to begin with, in status quo, there is no assurance, even if you get into prison, even if you get into rehabilitation, you can still do crime. I'll prove that in my extension later. But thirdly then, they tell you that the government has the responsibility of the safety towards the citizens. Exactly then, if you want genuine change, if you want to deter these ex-convicts, for example, for not doing crime again, you use bio-enhancement, right? Because exactly then, when there is no assurance that these prisoners will still do crime or not when they get out of prison, that is in and of itself a danger towards society. The government still fails their citizens when they do not use bio-enhancement, right? They have the responsibility to the safety of the citizens. They need to do this, right? They need to do bio-enhancement. But lastly then, I'll flag about the victims of circumstance in my extension. So, before any of that, any engagement. Okay, moving on. So, in my extension, I'll be talking about recidivism. Firstly then, what is recidivism in the first place? We say that this is when people who are in jail, when they get out, they do the same crimes again, they do the same crime with the same degree. That is to say that when you get into prison for doing drugs, right? When you get out, you're going to like sell drugs again. Exactly, yeah. Or like when you steal, you go into prison and then you go out and then you steal again, or murder and assault and etc. But why is that true that people want to do this? Three reasons why. Number one, because in the process of you being in prison, you're going to socialize with other prisoners. You're going to get connections with other drug dealers. You're going to meet with other fellow killers, other fellow people who assaulted other people. But secondly, with the existence of criminal records, people will get social sanctions anyway. They will still be rejected. Gabby already proved to you why these people are so rejected in the first place. They will have prejudice. What happens then when there's prejudice, right? There is no alternative of livelihoods for these prisoners. They will be forced to do these same crimes again because society keeps rejecting them, right? Because of the bad perception. But thirdly then, prison forces you to adapt the criminal mindset because you are conditioned to a situation where you are going to proliferate with other prisoners who do bad things, right? But also you are in fear of being beaten up in prisons. But the thing is, wardens are not going to act as a check and balance because wardens are underpaid in status quo. They will have a fear of also getting beaten up by these prisoners or getting shit. They are underpaid, therefore they have no incentive to want to care about prisoners getting beat up in these cells, right? We think that at the end of the day, CGS needs to be able to reintegrate people back into society and not just punishing them. 2 points of analysis then under this. We think that exactly that these prisoners, when they get out of jail, they're going to get more connections. Killers will meet with other killers in prison. They justify each other's actions, right? But secondly, when you get out of prison with the criminal mindset, rehabilitation is not going to be effective anymore. Why? 3 reasons. Number one, because at best, rehabilitation only enforces you to just be nice in that rehabilitation place in the first place. There is no assurance of you actually changing into a better human being at the end of the day. But secondly, even if you come back a changed man, people are still prejudiced against you. You will still be shunned. You will still be branded as a thief, as a killer, as someone who assaults other people. But thirdly then, the thing about rehabilitation in status quo is that the perception of society towards rehabilitation is already bad in and of itself. Because to enter rehabilitation, you need to do something bad first, right? Exactly then, people are still going to think badly of you. We think that the impact here is twofold. Number one, the integration is not going to be effective. 2 things under this. Number one, you're going to push prisoners into a cycle of crime. We told you why, then people are going to do recidivism again. Exactly then, because they have criminal records, they're going to be shunned, you're forced to do the crime all over again. It's a cycle. But secondly then, for victims of circumstance, like stealing bread in order to live, or like killing their rapist, for example, in self-defense, right? They're still branded as a thief, right? They're still branded as a person who killed someone else, regardless if it is self-defense, regardless if it is a victim of circumstance in not, right? Exactly then, these people are still going to be shunned. There is still no livelihood for these people at the end of the day. They're still stigmatized, they're still scrutinized, right? But second impact then, people are likely to do recidivism again. Because there is no mechanism to alter the behavior, there is no mechanism to assure you that these people are going to change at the end of the day, right? Three comparisons then. Number one, on our side, oh, okay, but before I, yeah, go ahead.
But is there like no chance of crime happening on your side after you get these video enhancement for the same person again?
Sure, crime may happen, but at least on our side of the house, when you do bioenhancement, there is no chance of them doing crime again because they're going to be deterred. Because it actively changes their brain chemistry, for example. Three comparisons. Number one, on our side of the house, the impacts of criminal records are minimized because you have bioenhancement. Victims of circumstance are going to be less likely to be scrutinized by these people in the first place because they have a change of perception, because you see that these people, when they get injected, they are going to be a better person. It is guaranteed. Secondly, recidivism is not likely to happen because of the irreversible brain chemistry change because of the injection in itself, right? But thirdly then, regardless of the harrowing experiences you have in prison, right, you can still change your brain chemistry, you can still alter the trauma you get from having the bad experiences in prison, right? I think the way here is both sides of the house is looking for crimes not to be happening again, right? But the tipping point on the government side of the house is because there is a guarantee that people will change and that there is guarantee that the impacts of criminal records are going to be lessened. There's going to be less emphasis on criminal records and how people treat you because of your own criminal record, right? I think that opposition needs to answer all of this, right? Very proud to propose.
Thank you so much for that fine speech. Now I call upon the second author for the speech here.
Let me have a minute to prepare my speech, please. Alright. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panelists, they always talk about a cycle of crime that will happen on our side, but what is happening on theirs is actually over cycle. What am I trying to say here? They are talking about how these people won't do crime again because their brain chemistry is altered, as in such like if they are stealing, they are going to be given this enhancement not to think of stealing anymore. Well, what are the cycles that I'm talking about here? What about the other form of crime? Like they never explain to you like how these people are guaranteed not to do any other form of crime that I've been saying before. Like for example, maybe they were given brain altering chemistry not to think about stealing, but how about killing? How about doing robbery? How about everything else that is not being given by the dosage of their crime? Because they really stated it before, like they are only going to be giving dosages of things that they did in the first place. Like so like you can't really argue that you are going to give dosage of non-killing chemistry or like non-robbery chemistry to people who did stealing. So so crime is still going to happen on their side, and this actually creates an endless cycle of enhancement, which is to think about is very dystopian, right? Like you don't really want this to happen.
Enhancement, especially because we don't alter the way they think genuinely by giving all these process that they actually made from the very first start. So, moving on. They also state that prison will still exist on our and on their side, etc., etc. But moving on that, I'm going to question then why is it even necessary for them to be present in the first place? Like this actually deters the purpose of like imprisonment in the first place, and I will actually explain to that next on to my speech. And moving on, they always talk about the complex process that we are going to give in our case. And it is really simple to think about. Like human is actually complex beings, right? Like we are actually like given so many things that could actually make us human. Like it's not only just your brain chemistry. It's actually having something to do with your heart, with your kindness, with your environment, and so on. Like there are so many things that could actually change you as a human. And like in their case, they never explain to you like why society, why environment, or like your friends, etc., won't change you as a whole. Like for example, you already get this enhancement, right? But like, does that mean that your environment can't change you anymore? Like, okay, that you get these non-stealing chemistry and so on, but like, if you are still in an environment that encourages you to steal, like, wouldn't that actually happens again? Like, your brain chemistry is going to like change over and over again, and this is something that you can't really argue about because like our brain chemistry is actually something that is so complex, and like this is not the only thing that could actually alter the way we act because like our behavior is actually something that is so complex that is based on not only the brain chemistry and not only on that but so many things that comes from external, whether it's external or internal factors. So moving on, judges, I'm going to talk about how prisoners are actually in status quo right now because we are going to note that not all prisoners are actually bad person overall. These people are sometimes, first of all, trying to do good things with the wrong way, and secondly, they could be under a certain pressure to do these bad things. And we are not saying that these super mastermind villain type of people doesn't exist. No, but we are going to say that in the status quo right now, those people who are under these two circumstances are the majority of people in prison. So moving on, we are trying to say it's not all prisoners are somewhat these psychotic evil masterminds, right? Sometimes these crimes that they do are actually a form of humanity in their own way, which is we are trying to say in this case. Moving on.
If you say that victims of circumstances have bad morals, they're not morally bad because they're the majority of people in prison. But the beginning of their incentive to attempt to kill or stab people is because their moral is originally broken at that point of time.
Okay, I'm going to move on to my first point. First of all, like they are trying to do good things with the wrong way. What actually defines morality, panels? You can't really define morality in the first place because like everyone has a different sense of morality, right? Like, would I kill for my mother if someone is trying to attack her? Of course I would. But like, would I still be in prison for it? Of course I will, right? Like, you can't really argue on that because like I have a different sense of morality. Maybe you wouldn't kill that person if they're trying to attack your mother because you think that's the morally right thing to do. But I think it's not the morally like right thing to do. So you can actually define moral that way. Like there is no actual sense of morality that you could actually pinpoint in here. So I'm going to talk about that later on my second point. So moving on, humanity is very complex. Like it is full of flaws, and these flaws are actually what's making us human in the first place. No matter how big or no matter how small it is, like all these crimes that happen are actually what's making us our society as humane as it may possibly be. So like these the proposition are actually endangering this humanity that we are trying to save. They are trying to like eradicate it by doing all these brain chemistry thing. Like this is so dystopian to even think about. Like we are then robbed of our rights to be ourselves, to think as ourselves, and the rights to make our own capabilities of moral behaviors. So moving on, we already know that not everyone is actually bad, and they could actually change, panels. These prisoners could change from a form of rehabilitation, etc., etc. If you really want them to change, then maybe you could focus on the rehabilitation sessions to be better, or so on. So like we must actually try to help them to genuinely change from heart, because these genuine changes are what we are trying to make to actually improve them as a human as a learning process. The point of imprisonment in the first place and any kind of punishment is actually useless on their side because like it is going to be useless because like they are going to receive this enhancement in the end, right? So like in our case, we're giving them these punishment for them to learn from their mistakes so that they could actually grow on their own term. And this is actually taken away from prop side, as I was saying before, because like they will have less process of how these people could actually know like how is this bad, how is this good, right? Because they, in the end of the day, they are going to be their brain chemistry is going to be altered, and they have less process on how like they could actually think that this is bad or not. So, okay. So moving on, this actually makes the thing of punishment on their side is actually useless in the end. I would argue on that. So moving on, these the moral change in our side is actually more beneficial. Why? Because it's genuine and human, and it is something that is more familiar to us as to our nature as a human. Because no matter what, we all have this sense of humanity that could actually deter us from actually accepting all these bio enhancements. On our side, we're also considering these prisoners as humans, treating them as one, instead of using these bio enhancement as if we are superior to them. And I was moving on to that to my second point, in which criminal justice system in our status quo is not all about 100% right? Like most of the time, they failed us. The government or the judges are just as corrupt as we are, as the prisoners are, and the status quo. Like they're not 100% a good person. So like, what gives them the justification for them to actually determine what is good and what is not? What makes their moral the right standards for us? Because like they could be just as corrupt as we are. Like there's no justification on prop side to prove like wise government or wise judges is just as qualified as we are to actually determine what is good and what is not for other people. So like uh, well, especially talking about how they could be just as morally incapable as we are. And like moving on to my last point in society, because like we are as a human as a whole, like we are intact as a human, and of course we all have the same sense of humanity. They could of course have a sense of resilience towards this something so foreign to them, because like they are so foreign to these brain altering chemistry, and as an human we actually think that this is very inhumane to do, and we can't really argue that we have this nature to reject this. So we save all the actors and we make all actors happier in our side, and I'm proud to oppose.
Please don't start the timer yet. I want to tidy up my notes. Okay. Before I start my speech, I would like to give a quick trigger warning because we're talking about a sensitive issue. I'll try my best to not be offensive. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Like SZA said on her famous song, I just killed my ex, that was a bad idea. That's what we want to prevent on our side of the house and how we will champion today's debate. Opposition's whole case in today's debate talks about two things: whether or not it's feasible or whether or not it would prevent recidivism. On the first thing that we want to rebut is how we on this debate we're talking about with feasibility. So we shouldn't even debate on will it happen, is it a guarantee, will like society can like rechange their brain chemistry and all. That's all not supposed to be debatable because it's clear from the motion that it's with feasibility. So with that, I'll go into my rebuttals. My first rebuttal about their claim, they said that it's against agency and consent. Firstly, we think it's not true because of how when you do these crimes, you already break people's consent. Like when you steal, you already break into people's house without consent. When you sexually harass someone, it's like you're already touching people without consent. So like at the first place, you already break people's consent first. It's like an eye for an eye, and that's why we say that even if like dosing this bio enhancement breaks people agency and consent, we say that it's going to be okay because of how at the first place you already broke people's consent. Moving on to my second rebuttal, they say how people's perception is going to be like, oh, so like you can't change his prisoners and like the government has to force to use bio enhancement. They never even explain why this perception is going to be bad in society. Yet still, let's flip this. we think it's not important because of how, with this perception, it is the reality of the world, and how um, in opposition, it's going to be bad because of how the government is not going to find a solution that's more guaranteed. Because of how like my previous speaker said, the government best interest is to protect the people. So if it's by creating a bio enhancement that can guarantee people to not want to redo the same crime, we prefer a world with the bio enhancement. Because of that, I'll be going on to the two big clashes in today's debate. The first clash is about which side of the house can prevent recidivism. We think that at the end of the day, both sides of the house wants to prevent this, and we think we can do it better because of how they claim that what if like people steal and then they get the dose and then like they go out of jail and then like they do another crime like murder. Two responses. Firstly, we think it's not even true because of how not only will this dose like help you, let's just say like you steal and you get a dose, so like you won't want to steal. It would encourage you to donate more. It would This dose would actually give you and enhance your moral decision making. So we think that after the dose, because you already get the dose, it's least likely going to happen that you want to do other crimes because your moral decision making is already going to be enhanced. And even if it were to happen, it's going to be worse on their side. Because of how, let's picture this. Let's just say on our side, worst case, someone like steals and they go in jail and they get the dose and then they go out and let's just say they murder someone. When they go back to jail, they'll get the dose for that, and when they go out, it'll be a guarantee that they won't do that crime again. Yet comparatively, on opposition side of the house, when someone steals, they go to jail, and because they're already part of like this crime ring and this cycle of crime where their life like they already have a criminal record and like they murder someone and they go back to jail, what we're trying to prove is the rehabilitation on their side. It's not going to be guaranteed because like let's just say what they never even explain what's the rehabilitation on their side. So like even if we were to interact with that, like let's just say like these pastors coming to like prison to like give like social seminars about moral decision making. We say it's not even going to be a guarantee because of how just because the prisoners are listening to these pastors preach about making the right decision, it doesn't mean that their minds should be changed. Unlike the bio enhancement, that's already a full guarantee. So because of that, we can come to the conclusion on how government side wins the very first clash of how which side will prevent recidivism because of how when you weigh this, it's like would you rather go for something risky and takes longer time, or would you rather go on something that's more guaranteed with this bio enhancement and it would even increase your moral decision making? We say the safe choice is to vote for government side of the house. Because of that, we're going to go into the second clash in today's debate about which side of the house will be accepted back in society. I think the main problem in today's debate is how both sides wants that after going out of prison, you still can get opportunities to get jobs. Because let's just take a look. Like let's just say you get a sentence for 5 years. When you're in prison for 5 years, because you won't work, you don't make any salaries. So automatically, when you go out, you won't have enough savings in your bank because of how like 5 years you were like unemployed, right? That's why you need the money. You need the equal opportunity to get a job and relive your life and continue living when you get out of prison. So opposition comes to this house saying they want to protect these victims of circumstances. Well, two responses. Firstly, we think it's not true because of how we and it's not exclusive because of how we can also protect them, and we think it's better on our side of the house because let's just take a scenario like people murder someone else for self-defense on government side of the house with the bad perception of these criminal records. Even if it was titled as self-defense, yet they still get sentenced when they get out. Do you think they will get accepted to jobs? No. And the reason they're declined for these jobs is because of how they have this criminal record, of how there's no guarantee that they will fully change, of how the corporations are afraid that they would like redo the murder because of how they already once did it before. Best case on opposition side of the house, they will get jobs, yet like lower jobs like blue collar workers or like these people who works in construction. Yet comparatively on government side of the house, when you do get the bio enhancement in society, because of how society's perceptions will change on you and will see how it's already guaranteed that you would change after going out of prison, even if you do have the criminal record, corporations will not be afraid to accept you because of how they know that your moral decision making it's already enhanced, that you won't redo it. So corporations won't feel scared when they have to when they want to accept you in the job because of how even though if both sides of the house can say like, yeah, at the end of the day we get jobs. Yet if you want to weigh this, you have to weigh on how in prison time you don't make money, yet you still need the money after going out of prison. You still need to buy food, you still need to buy like clothes and etc. So that's why after yeah, I'll take it.
But it's not fair for people who are not doing crimes because like isn't that the part of social sanction?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Is that not fair for people who are not doing crimes? It's like is that not a part of social sanction because you know because you did crime?
Well, we think that social sanction should only be necessary when people still have a chance of redoing their crime. That's why social sanction is needed. In our world, because of how there's already a guarantee that they won't do it, people don't need to shame them again every day because of how they're already changed. They don't need to be reminded of their bad behavior. So we say, even without social sanctions, our world is going to be better than that. So if you want to weigh these panels, you should see on how, at the end of the day, these prisoners who go out of prison still need a living cost and still need the money. So therefore, they will have a more equal chance to start over in society and become a better person that's already guaranteed in government side of the house. Due to that, we can come to the conclusion how government side of the house wins the second clash about which side of the house will be accepted back in society. Because of that, government side of the house can fully win this debate because of how we prevent recidivism and give an equal opportunity to prove yourself back in society. Because of that, very proud to propose. Thank you.
Okay, we'll start my speech in three, two, one. The main point of enforcing the law itself is to actually minimalizing the prevalence of the crime to actually happen again, not to eliminate the prevalence of the crime itself so that the crime would never be happening again. Because in fact, we are human itself, we do make mistakes. Because in fact, those people who get the biomedical intervention is only the people who comes from the prisoners, which means that those people who aren't already prisoners would actually more likely to actually do some crimes some crimes because of the fact that they did not have those biomedical intervention again, those biomedical intervention yet, which means that their side of the house, they were saying about like how this would actually eliminate the crime that was happening in the real world itself. When in fact the main point of enforcing the law itself is to actually minimalizing the criminality to actually happen. This is the main point that they have been missing in this whole debate. So what are the reasons that they have been? So what are the reasons that they're losing in this debate? The first thing is that the useless and unclear mechanization that has been happening in their side of the house when they were saying to you, no, when they were saying to you that they were actually going to give this dosage of the biomedical itself after they actually finished their time on the jail itself. Let me just say, then what's the point of making them into go to the jail itself when in fact you're actually just going to give them those biomedical intervention itself at the end? So let me just say how this would actually make the criminality would actually much more likely to actually happen in the side of the house. What context are we talking about? In the context when they are trying to spend their time on the jail itself. Because in fact, by us giving them this biomedical intervention, those prisoners who actually have a reason to actually do this criminality would actually think of themselves as a bad people, and by the end of the day, because I'm a bad people, then I will get this biomedical intervention. So because of this, because they think like at the end of the day I will get this biomedical intervention. So even if I do some bad things when I spend my time in jail, it was not going to be a problem because in fact those people will actually give me the biomedical intervention that would likely to make me a much more greater person, right? Which means that the chance of how this prisoner will actually go berserk in the prison, how they would actually like harming each other, how they would actually like rape each other, or even like something else like that, bad things that could happen in the prison itself would more likely to happen in their side of the house because of the unclear mechanization that is happening in their side of the house. And yes, I take the PI.
They wouldn't do much harm in prison because again in prison laws are like this. If you do much more harm, your sentence in the prison itself will twice-fold. Therefore, there is for them to not do harm in prison.
That is a really bad PI that comes from you because you prove that by the end of the day, putting these people into prison is like one of the biggest or even like one of the efficient ways to actually make these people to not do crimes again. That is a really bad PI that comes from you. And then nextly, I think we went on the point of the consistency itself, but in fact we do realize that these people actually have a reason to do the crime itself. When there's the house claiming that these people, when they get the biomedical intervention itself, they would actually they would actually make themselves to have an actual good decision making itself. But the problem in their side of the house, they were never actually explaining to you what kind of good decision making itself, and what kind of good decision itself they would actually what kind of the good decision making that would actually come from their side of the house. When in fact they were saying to you about like how good decision making would actually make these people to not do crimes again. Let's play on their cases, right? Let's play on their cases like if some prisoners who is actually a father, when they actually saw their children being harmed or even being harassed by other people, then what are the good decision making that this father could actually do? Of course, he would actually like do something that could actually like stop these people to actually stop these bad people to actually harass their own children. Like, I feel that by the end of the day, what kind of way of this father to actually like stop the way of these people to not harass their own children? Of course, they could actually like, punish these people, or even like they could do to actually stop these people, which means that by the end of the day, criminality would actually still happen, and these people who actually like got a dosage, or even like got a dosage of this biomedical intervention, yes, they do actually get a good decision making, but it doesn't mean that it would not gonna get them into the prison again. Because in fact, if that decision making is to actually protect other people, then of course they have a more likely the chance to actually attack other people, right? Because they have something that they protect. That is the main problem that has been happening in their side of the house, because they didn't even engage with this type of problem. And then secondly, how they were losing in this debate, because they were saying, because they were saying about like how bad stigmatization were actually gone in their side of the house. Firstly, they were oversimplifying about how stigmatization would actually work. Those stigma would actually still work even if you actually have got those biomedical intervention, even if those governments has actually promoted you to other people and saying that these people actually has already got this biomedical intervention. No, stigmatization would actually still happening, because in fact, what do you think about those people? No. What do you think about these people who has already been the victim of the crime itself? Would they just like lightly saying that, oh, he's already got the biomedical intervention, now I can be friends with him? No, right? They would actually be still feel like they would actually still a feeling of the hatred of these people who actually still got the biomedical intervention itself. And they were saying to you about like how these people were actually more likely to have a good job itself. They were not realizing about like how it would actually how they were saying to you about like how these bad people would actually like get a good paying job, while in our side of the house they would just like get a less paying job. But let me just tell you, they did not realize about like how the reality of the world today itself. The stigmatization would actually still happen when, in fact, if you actually like trying to find a job and you are actually an ex-murderer, ex-rapist, or something else like that, would you think that this company, this high-rank company, would actually just like would likely to actually accept you just because you maybe like have the capability of skills or something else like that? But no, right? Because at the end of the day, this would actually harm the this would actually harm this would actually harm the popularity, or even like harm the identity of the company itself. Which means that in this side of the house, they would not likely to actually have a good job itself. Which means that in our side of the house, even if we do have we do have a less paying job, at the end of the day, this is the job that they could actually get. This is the job that they can actually have to actually live their own life. This is the problem. Which means that by the end of the day, we went on the context of the reality of the world itself. We went on the context of the consistency itself. So let's just say they were saying to you about like how this prisoner like just like go out, and then they have the right to actually go out because of the fact that they have the biomedical intervention and stuff. No, let me just give a response to this. We have to know that by the end of the day, this prisoner like many of them actually deserve to have a life sentence in the prison itself, which means that by the end of the day, if they were actually evil, or if they were actually like that bad as a person, then of course you would actually just more likely to just make them stay in the prison itself. Because by the end of the day, we are trusting the process of the human itself. For in fact, like if somebody like have spent a time 20 years in the prison itself, and they were actually like 20 years old when they did the crime itself, would they more likely to actually did the same crime again? No, right? Because in fact they realized they have been spending so much time of their life, and of course they were not going to be spending their time to actually like do the same crime again, and to actually like spend their time in the jail again. That is why at the end of the day, we won on the whole class. We won this debate, and there's no way that they could win in this debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this statement, Mr. Reyes.
please allow me to chat up a bit? Then I will begin my speech in three, two, one. The one thing that I really regret about how the government lives in such a dystopian world where they view humans who are inmate of prison as someone who cannot change genuinely, whatever the cost is, hence why forcing all of these inmates to consume a dose of drugs they seem to be justified at the end of the day, when in fact they fail to consider on how first, the main purpose of criminal justice system on both sides of the house is basically to punish someone objectively, right? Which is more fair as with criminal justice system. It's basically they have heavy consideration on the reason they did the crime, and they will get like proper punishment at the end of the day. But when by enhancement being done to everyone, not even like you can choose to do it or not. It's as if you're punishing these people who don't even deserve it or don't even need to change themselves on the current status quo to consume these drugs, forcing them to being someone they're basically not. The thing about like all of these brain chemistry and how they guarantee also like how they will not commit crime at the end of the day. The thing is that crime is done through many complex issues from both sides of the house. Like my second has that also like the complex issues from their environment. Even if like brain chemistry change, if your environment forces you to commit a crime, even if your brain chemistry is already altered, if the situation forces you to do it, you will commit crime again and again. This has been stated from my second and like first from the very beginning of our speech, meaning like how they guarantee about how after like all of these brain chemistry, people will not commit crime did not stand on their side of the house. I also really regret on how on the government side they oversimplify on how the fact of like human cannot change genuinely because of like there's no other alternative solution rather than like brain alteration process will is done on our side of the house. While they said that we did not propose to you any of like genuine mechanism or like a correct mechanism, my second has already said about rehabilitation has done more good than harm on our side of the house. This is basically the least the government can do to prisoners who are actually a victim from society. The government failed to actually guarantee all of their welfare. So actually, by giving all these bio enhancement, forcing all these brain alteration to them, it's actually ripping all of their human sense of like genuinely changing on their side of the house, making all of these statements did not stand or like did not actually justify all of their action whatsoever. While on our side of the house, we actually said to you how like crime actually is such a complex process on why people did that in the first place. When there's actually victims that they need to consider that are like the case of like a failed society that the government failed, like all of the cases of like the grandma who actually like steal woods to actually survive. But yes, the government like give them 5 years in prison. If that kind of person you deem to be as someone that is evil, even with the control of dosage, you're actually forcing them into a mindset on how, oh, you're basically a bad person, even if you're trying to stay alive at the end of the day, which they did not consider, even if they did not consider at the end of on their side of the house. The main purpose of all of the issues that we actually propose to you is actually how to consider a human being to change genuinely, not to force them into like a mold they need to be a good person. Like my second has that morality diverse for all person. Like if your main reason to actually commit crime is to protect yourself or like to protect your loved one, can you actually justify forcing them into thinking, oh, they're such a bad person that can't be changed, so that their brain alteration needs to be done? This actually forced the mindset of, oh, even if my effort to stay alive, my effort to actually protect someone that I love will be diminished on their side of the house. This does not make any sense because on their side of the house, it actually did not protect any of the vulnerable actor that is actually the victim of the current status quo that the government failed to actually guarantee all of their welfare. You need also to realize that not all prisoners will commit crime because of greed. Some of them even did all of these to like protect themselves for like self-defense and all. So by saying that brain alteration chemistry is actually justified because they view everyone as such bad prisoners, will such prisoners cannot be justified at the end of this debate. And with that, I'm so proud to oppose.
Thank you so much for the explanation. Let's begin with the member question. Here.
4 points why opposition lost this debate. Number one, we think that opposition's case is contingent on rehabilitation being good. But notice the implication here is that this is entirely dismissive of the whole BLO extension, telling you why rehabilitation cannot be effective and that it only perpetuates recidivism even more. Their idea cannot fly. But secondly, I'd like to point out that they brought a new matter on WIP about people doing whatever in prison because of the dosage, right? I think you should not credit this simply because this is new matter. But thirdly, then on morality, I think Jose already explained to you that your morality is subjective insofar as it does not harm other people, right? So on morality, we still think that we are going to take that on morality. But fourthly, then there is no fiat on opposition to prove why. There's no fiat on opposition that rehabilitation rehabilitation and its quality is simply that good, right? They never give you analysis on why rehabilitation is that good. It is so facilitated, right? Because they did not give you any elaboration, this idea cannot fly, their whole benefit is gone. Two clashes then in this debate. Firstly, which side gives less recidivism? We tell you that recidivism is a prevalent issue, right? Because you are conditioned in prison into a situation that forces you to do crime again, regardless if you are a victim of circumstance or not. Their response was saying that it's not that simple. You have a complex mechanism to change people. But notice then, we already tackled this by saying that it is in our fiat that people will change, that the change is irreversible. You will always be deterred to doing crimes. But then they tell you, people will then be able to do other types of crimes, right? We say that two things under this. Number one, we already proved why law exists on our side of the house on Gabby's setup, right? Therefore, deterrence is achieved because these people are going to go into prison in the first place. Gabby already explained that. But secondly, even if so, Jose already proved to you why, even if they do crime again, they can still get punished again, they can still get the dosage anyway. So we don't understand why they keep pushing this burden onto us that deterrence cannot be achieved when it is already achieved, right? I think the weighing here is that both sides of the house want to reduce recidivism. It's just that on government side of the house, the tipping point is that there is less harm that is going to happen in the process of people getting out of prison. Because we explained to you why there is still chance of people doing crime when they do not get the dosage, right? When they do not get the moral enhancement in the first place. Exactly why government already takes this first clash. Second clash then on integration. We tell you that criminal records take away opportunities for the vulnerable, people who are victims of circumstance. Exactly then, our mechanism tackles that because it actively lessens the impact of criminal records. Their response was not enough when they tell you that people are still going to take it into consideration. They never try to elaborate it. But then they told us about, victims of circumstances are so important. Two things under this. Number one, DLO already tackled this, right? Because they still get the harm anyway of criminal records, they are still going to be scrutinized. But secondly, there is no explanation why on their side of the house, people will accept these victims of circumstances, right? There is no elaboration. They only push the harm that people will not take care of these victims of circumstance. They never give to you an alternative on how we can actually save these victims of circumstance, right? I think the weighing here is that both sides want integration at the end of the day. It's just we have different alternatives, right? Government takes the tipping point because Gabby and Joseph proved to you why the integration is at least better on our side of the house because it is not only limited to blue-collar jobs, for example. When Joseph told you that the integration can look like people not judging you, people not scrutinizing you, people not bad-mouthing you in public, right? When you are seen as a victim of, when you are seen as like a victim of circumstance, right? We say that exactly then because we already proved to you why victims of circumstances, their own vulnerable actor, can still be safe on our side of the house. Is exactly when we take this debate by a landslide, right? Very proud to propose.
Thank you so much for that speech. The request in terms of proclamation, uh, means the ending of the debate. The judges will control after this. Thank you so much for the debate. And go back to the debate hall and waiting for that for the you can share. Thank you so much.
Thank you, that was really fun debate, huh? That was really fun.